It just said recording in progress. Did you hear that on your end?
I did.
I've never hear it say that before.
Really?
That is so weird. So anyway, everybody knows that we're recording now. So so I'm here with Deanna. Deanna, we've known each other for what, maybe 10 years or so?
Yeah, probably like 2012, so almost 10 years.
Somewhere in there.
Yeah.
It was you were, well, when we met, I was still doing the CNA gig and you were a nurse. What got you into wanting to be a nurse?
That's a great question, James. I actually started off as a massage therapist. I was kind of moving towards maybe working in physical therapy. As you probably know me, James, I get bored easily. So I think nursing in general, there's so many things that you can do with nursing. Like I worked with you in ortho, and then I decided, I wanted some more intensity. So I worked in the ICU. Worked in the ICU for 4 years. And then, during that time, I was also doing photography. So I kind of like to do bits and pieces of everything. And then I guess that's kind of what drew me to nursing is I do have this care and love for many people. And I like to provide that care and love for many people, but there's so many different ways you can do it. And that's why I think nursing is so awesome, is that you could do so many aspects of healthcare with nursing. And if, say, you get kind of bored or you want to learn something new, you can go into a different specialty within nursing. So I think that's what really drew me as well. And now I'm kind of doing more quality nursing. So I work basically kind of like informatics, but I am working a lot with quality metrics. I currently work for a cardiothoracic surgeon. So again, there's just so many things that you can do with nursing. And that's why I love it so much.
Mm-hmm. You kind of talked over my head. What quality? What was that?
Yeah, so I picked up the quality gig in nursing. So as a quality nurse, I've done so many aspects of quality. Quality is such a big world in healthcare that I think a lot of people don't really. There's so many aspects of quality in general that people don't see. I think when people think of a nurse, they think direct patient care. A nurse is providing me medications, or they're helping me with any ADLs. So, but quality, there's a lot more to quality. There's a lot of patients with quality. So with quality, there's a ton of like metrics that you have to look at, quality metrics. And basically there's a lot of tracking and trending within that. And then you get to see with the, like, if you have to be a nerd like me, you like graphs and you like to see what do these quality, what are the outcomes basically of these quality metrics? Is there any need for improvement? Should we maybe look at something different within quality? So, there's so many things within quality in healthcare that I think a lot of people don't see. And that's kind of what my position is now.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah.
What do you have any ideas of where you want to go nursing wise after that? Are you already planning the next chess move?
That's a great question, James. So I am enrolled in my master's degree at St. Anthony College of Nursing as a clinical nurse leadership. I've been kind of bouncing around, not really sure what my end goal is. I do love to be educated and I love to grow. And so I'm not quite sure where I want to go, to be quite honest. There's so many things. I always like to say I'm a jack of all trades, but I'm a master of really nothing. And I think right now, my life goal is to figure out what my master would be. So I honestly don't know right now, but that's a good question.
Do you have any desire to do any kind of like nurse practitioner thing?
Yeah, so initially, so prior to me picking up the quality gig, I worked as a director of health services for a long-term care facility. I do have a big passion for the geriatric population, and I initially wanted to go into becoming a nurse practitioner, but I think after getting into quality and seeing what the whole world of quality and healthcare was, that really intrigued me. So I think my end goal, if anything, would ultimately be going into like nursing informatics. I think that's kind of where I'm headed towards right now. But again, it's kind of up in the air. And as you know me, I like to do lots of things and I like to learn many things. I just really do encourage those people, especially if you're not really sure what you want to do in life. I mean, you obviously as a nurse have to love people and care about people. But if you're not really sure what you want to do in life, I always like to say, maybe just look into nursing. I mean, there's so many things you could do with the nursing. Like me, I kind of went here and there, and I know many of my other colleagues have done the same. So if there's always work with nurses, and again, you can always do the nerdy computer stuff like I do right now, or you can do direct patient care and provide your work in that sense, I guess. So.
Well, it's absolutely true. It's been interesting that it's been, gosh, how many years now that you and I worked in ortho, and we had so many great people who worked on that unit at that time, and
Yeah.
still being friends with all those people on social media and kind of watching their careers, where they've gone into and where they've gone. It was like at one point in time we were all in ortho, and then some have gone cardiac, some have gone ICU, some have gone emergency.
Absolutely.
That is 100% true of nursing. And I have to say that geriatrics is like, that's a rough racket, and it needs, like, I firmly believe, all the help it can get right now.
I 100% agree.
Early in my CNA days, that's where I worked. That's where me and my wife met. We were both CNAs in a long-term care facility. And believe me, I could launch into like a whole nother podcast about like how poorly these things are funded by the state and the feds. It's atrocious, like beyond. I forget which philosopher once said that you can always judge a society by how they treat their elders. And
right.
Boy, as a country, we kind of stink at that. That's for sure.
Right. And I honestly, James, I kind of wanted to add on to that because that is something I've always been passionate about, and something that I always had a big concern about, just because of my work with the geriatric population. There's always nursing shortage, right? I mean, in the hospitals, we're seeing that nationwide, especially during COVID. But the geriatric population, it really breaks my heart because, I mean, we have state regulations for, I mean, childcare, for there's a certain number of health or providers for, or like healthcare providers for like children when you go take them to daycare, but then you don't really have, especially in assisted living where the regulations are so vague, they don't really have a specific number of nursing staff that you need. And I mean, that never really made sense to me because if we had, not to compare geriatrics with like children when you take them to daycare, but it's just, I feel like there needs to be more, that geriatric care needs to be addressed maybe a little bit further. Again, there's a huge growing population of adults going into the geriatric route. I mean, we're all growing and we're all going to be there one day. And it just saddens me because I feel like there needs to be more attention to it. So I'm really glad you brought that up because that is something I'm very passionate about and something I do want to see in the future. Again, we need more nurses. So anybody out there wants to become a nurse, I absolutely think that's something you should look into. Again, you have to love people and you have to care about people. So, because nursing in general, I mean, think about it. You have to give absolutely everything of yourself, mentally, physically, emotionally, absolutely everything to your patients. And so there's a lot of also filling up your own cup, I guess, lack for better terms. I mean, you need to really figure out how to care for others. First of all, you gotta care for yourself as well. So, I mean, there's a lot to think about too, I guess, with going into nursing. But absolutely, James, I don't mean to go off, but that is something I'm very passionate about. So.
Well, me too. And it was, to me, it was always frustrating working in a long-term care home.
Yeah.
And I fully understand that the facilities had like budget constraints. That was the biggest problem. So therefore, it was always this attempt to get by with the fewest amount of staff as possible. And how you can expect on like a third shift to have 3 CNAs on a unit with 40, 50 some patients who all
Yeah,
need help going to the bathroom, who all need help getting cleaned. And, you know, I don't know how many CNAs did it, but I would always sort of remark to myself when you're standing in someone's room and you would see the pictures that were up there and you would see this, you know, picture of this guy in his World War II uniform and him with his, you know, shipmates, you know, when they were getting
yeah,
mustered out of the service, and, you know, then pictures of them in the 70s with their children and on and on and on. And now it's this, you know, become, as time marches on, this now, you know, 90-year-old man who's sitting in a chair, who's just looks like he's just completely resigned to his fate, and unfortunately at times filthy,
right,
covered in bed sores because people aren't taking care of him. Because when you are in this position where you have that much work and so little help that you're staffing, that just like bleeds the empathy away from people. Then it just
right,
becomes, how do I get through this shift? How do I get out of here? And the fact that we're treating people like that, and that you could have people who have such great lives, had such proud lives, and they're going to spend the last of their years in that kind of situation, I think is just like irreprehensible. It drives me insane even thinking about it.
right, absolutely. I mean, and I think too, as a nurse, and you're going into work, I mean, many people, they don't understand that, or they don't see that side of them. They see them as, okay, you're a patient, I have tasks to accomplish, and not looking at them as a whole person. So, I mean, that's definitely a great point too, James, because I mean, they have their own story, and we're there to help them, and give them the best quality of life that they can have. So, I mean, that's definitely true. And I think too, kind of just going into that, I mean, healthcare leadership, and I don't mean to, I think that's also a big factor of, how can we keep maybe nursing staff in place? And a lot of that has to do with, I mean, healthcare leadership. I mean, there's so many things you have to keep. In fact, there's the financial aspect to long-term care. I mean, we're trying to keep the financial component in place, but then you also have the nursing side as well, which that's the whole purpose and reason why these residents or patients come to long-term care, is because they want to have a good care. They want to have good nursing care. They want to have great quality of life. So something that I've also been very passionate about on top of that is, how do we keep these nursing staff in a facility? How do we keep them? Because again, they have to pour out their entire selves to these patients, these residents, and that's something that I think as well. I find in healthcare leadership that maybe tends to struggle a bit, is there's still this healthcare nursing mentality. I think it's kind of transitioning into something new, where you see a lot of the older, experienced nurses kind of eating their young, and it's very rough and gruff. We live in a society now where it's very visual. So we have all these new nursing CNAs, these nursing staff, where they are also being very educated on leading others by serving them and helping them. So when they come in, I guess they get kind of intimidated. And I think that's something that I've seen a lot working at some of the previous facilities I have, was you see a lot of these very energetic new nurses and CNAs that come in, and they have to kind of be trained by a lot of these maybe tired and overworked nurses who just come off like they just don't really want to be there. They don't care. And it's a shame. So I think as a healthcare leader, one of the things I really learned taking that role was basically leading by example. I know it sounds kind of cliche, right? But it's really true, because again, we live in a society where it's very visual, and you can say and do, you can say whatever you want, but if we don't see nowadays, like we don't see somebody actually caring, it really does make us wonder and think like, well, what's the point of me being here if nobody else cares? So I guess one of the things that I also really encourage nurses, if they are looking into leadership, is there's healthcare leadership, and I feel like there's business bosses. And I think people mix up leadership and a boss. and they don't really understand the difference. And I feel leadership is very much not a hierarchy, but more of a line of you know, of getting at it and caring for others or doing anything within healthcare as a team versus I'm telling you to do this, so you better do it or else you're going to get written up. And I think that was something too. I like to practice transformational leadership. There's so many different types of leadership styles. And I think it can work for depending on whatever leadership role you're in. But when you're in healthcare in particular, especially when you're leading a group of nursing staff, transformational leadership is something that I really think if anybody's out there listening that really wants to get into leadership in nursing, that's transformational leadership is something that really should be explored and practiced, because I kind of walked in, I felt like in the facility I worked in where they were very much not happy with certain things that were going on. Great team, wonderful, like just they were so strong in their nursing skills, but when you have a staff that's so unhappy, ignoring the problems, I guess, is not going to basically solve anything. I always like to use the analogy, you don't want to keep sweeping things underneath the rug because that dirt is eventually going to pile up. And just like we treat pain, if you treat pain early, the less pain medications you have to get. So I always like to attack things maybe early on so that you don't have to attack something significantly. It's going to be a lot more minor than it would be minor compared to when if you're going to wait for a problem just to continue to grow. So I apologize for rambling off, James, but that is something that I really wanted to point out, especially if anybody out there is listening and looking into leadership in nursing or healthcare. Really explore the transformational leadership. I mean, leadership in general is not easy, and I think people think that they think, oh, this person is just sitting in the office, they're not really helping out. I mean, that's absolutely not true. I mean, at least not for me. There's a lot that goes into leadership in healthcare. And I give a lot of those people that are in that position a lot of credit because there's a lot of scrutiny, I think. You get a lot of the focus and you get a lot of criticism, but there's just a lot to give, I mean, in healthcare in general. So I just wanted to say that. So
you are 100% correct. It gets confused, as you said, all the time. The difference between boss and leader are two completely different things.
Absolutely.
100%. And anybody who's listening to this, you can think back through past jobs you had, of prior bosses that you had, and you can easily, very quickly in your mind, pick out which ones were just bosses and which ones were leaders.
Right.
Leaders isn't easy. A lot of people, leaders, that's just, some of that's a learned ability, I think. Some of it is just natural. Like that's just, and I think unfortunately we end up in these people who end up promoted into positions because of the knowledge of their job versus their ability to be a good leader. And that makes all the difference in the world. You know, that was one of the biggest problems I had where one of the long-term facilities that I was working at is that, you know, you were short-staffed, you were always sore because you were running your rear end off. And on top of it, the management style at the facility was, we catch you doing one little thing, we're going to bring you in the office and you're going to get chewed out for it. You never got a, hey, good job. Hey, thanks for, you know, hey, let me help you with that. Is there anything I can do for you? It was just, you constantly felt like you were under this threat of getting called into the office and getting a letter in your file or something while you were just trying to bust your butt and do your job. And the overall attitude that then permeates the entire facility. It's reflective in every single worker. And you know, and you and I have seen it before. I used to get a kick out of it when the young CNAs and nurses would come in and they were all full of Vic and vigor and pep and ready to go. Personally, it got me excited. You know, we're both friends with Haley. Haley was the one who cracked me the most. Like she was ready to take the bull by the horns and conquer the world. You know? And she still does. I haven't talked to her in a while. But yeah, and it's unfortunate, like when someone comes in and they're like that passionate and that excited about what they're doing, and they unfortunately end up walking into a unit or a situation where things are very, I should say, ground down to the nub. And it's really unfortunate because you see people just lose that, like it just gets sapped right out of them, all that enthusiasm and everything, because, you know, people, unfortunately, we kind of semi-conform to the environment that we're in. you know. And so
Right.
when you have a situation like that where you have a boss running the place, not a leader, the morale is in the toilet, you know.
Right.
Any new fresh blood that comes in, man, that enthusiasm is just going to get squashed, and that really, really stinks.
Definitely. And I think working with you, James, and working with Jonathan, Swag, if you're out there, Haley, oh my gosh, but I love Haley. And I don't know, Judy really was somebody, Judy Carter, she was definitely somebody that I really felt like molded me into the nurse that I am. She really encouraged me a lot as a nurse, really made me feel like I can do anything. I don't know, it's just that whole ortho team. When we worked there, it was amazing. That was probably one of the best teams I've ever worked for. So I miss those days, honestly.
I do too.
Those are good times. I'll never forget, James, when you were on the phone and you acted like you were a doctor. Do you remember that? You called me and you acted like one of the neurosurgeons.
Yes.
And I was so scared.
Yes.
Because I was a new nurse.
Because you were all nervous about some decision you had made, and you were worried the doctor was going to be mad at you. So I went in the back and got on the phone and called you.
Oh my gosh, I just remember that was so funny. Yeah, we had some good times there.
I thought you were going to bring up me hanging your Hello Kitty thing from the ceiling.
That too, but
my daughter was just talking about that the other day because she saw a picture of it. And she goes, "What were you doing?" And I'm like, being a coworker.
Right. That was so fun.
Yeah, it was. No, oh man, Judy was the best. I mean, I'm sure she still is. She's not gone, but she was like, she was knowledgeable. She had all the experience in the world. She was always trying to have fun, and she accepted zero bullshit. Like that was like the perfect charge nurse you could have.
Awesome. Yeah. Judy, oh my gosh, she's one of the nurses that really did impact who I am today. And I looked at her and I'm like, she's been a nurse for how many years? And look at her attitude. I mean, she just came into work. She was just ready to get at it. And she was just so good to the newer nurses and the new CNAs. I'm like, gosh, Judy, if there's a nurse I could be like, you would be definitely one of them. So I don't know. I love that woman.
I always loved how experienced she was and how knowledgeable she was. And when she finally decided that she was going to take the plunge and get on Facebook, and the very first post she ever made on Facebook was, "How do I log out?"
I missed that one. That's awesome.
That was so great. I would think I was at home and I laughed so hard for so long. Yeah, that was an example of a really great unit of just everybody was there. And just like we were saying earlier, because of the fact that Judy was there, it was an attitude reflects leadership thing. Everybody had that attitude that she had, and had she been like some mean Cruella DeVille kind of angry, bitter person, we wouldn't have near as much fun in that unit as we did.
Absolutely. And I think that's also her. I mean, that's a good point, James. She was a definition of like healthcare leadership, because she helped, like, leadership in general. I mean, there's a domino effect to it if you like really think about it. If you have somebody that's strong and that positive, there's going to be more strong and positive people under them. So, I mean, that's a really good point. And I 100% agree. She is a great example of leadership in healthcare. So yeah, that's awesome.
Man, I feel like I got to reach out to her now and say hi. It's been so long,
I'm going to also.
We'll just have to plan like a One South reunion,
Oh gosh, that would be wonderful.
It would. Of course, I was thinking some of the people have moved away, but some of the people have moved away have since moved back. So it might be possible. I'm going to have to get on the horn on that one.
I can't remember where Haley moved. I think she moved out of state.
I don't know. Kelsey did, but she just recently moved back.
Oh yeah, Kelsey. She worked in neuro for a while.
Yeah. And I think she was in Arizona for a while, but I think her and her husband just moved back to like the Byron area, I think.
Oh, yeah. I honestly don't know whatever happened to Kelsey. I have to like snoop on social media to figure that out.
Go creeping.
Yeah.
So, other than the nursing thing, one thing that I thought was really, really awesome about you is years ago you got into photography.
Sure.
And got into doing that, and I'm not just trying to blow smoke here, but I've always thought obviously extremely talented. You know, I remember taking photography classes in high school, and one of the things my photography teacher said is that you can learn everything in the world about different kinds of lenses and different kind of backdrops and different kind of cameras. The one thing you can't learn is just having an eye for photography. Like that's one of those, you either have it or you don't. And
Yeah.
I remember like when we were working together on the unit, and you would come in and, you know, during our little bit of downtime at the nurse's station, you'd be going through some of the photography you've done. And I remember looking at it and thinking right away, like, oh my God, she's got the eye for it. Like 100%. Like there was no doubt, you know, there wasn't like a learning curve, like, oh, I tried this and this angle. Like, no, it was like right off the bat, like, boom, it
Yeah.
was right there. I've got pictures that I'm looking at right now that are hanging on my living room, all of my children that you've done. So clearly I'm not just talking. But anyway, back to the point of it. What was it that made you get interested in that to begin with?
Yeah. So, I mean, really, when I got out of nursing school, when I shortly after started nursing, I found myself, you know, like, what am I going to do with myself? Like, I don't know what to do with myself. So, I mean, prior to that, I had pictures done by another local photographer, and immediately what drew me to the picture was not seeing pictures of myself, but seeing the quality of the pictures, the high resolution pictures. So that really intrigued me into looking into photography myself. I wanted to learn photography I mean, taking pictures of my future children. I didn't have any at that time. So I never once claimed to be a professional photographer, which is so funny because everybody looks at me, they're like, oh my gosh, you're a professional photographer. And I'm like, I don't like to claim myself as that because I don't know absolutely every single technical thing with my camera or even my lens or even editing. I think there's a lot to photography that people simply just don't recognize, or they not belittle, but they just don't understand. And I basically picked up photography, honestly, using YouTube. YouTube educated me a lot. I really wanted to pick it up. I really wanted to learn it. And honestly, I just went to Walmart. I got a clearance Canon, a DSLR Canon. I don't even remember what kind it was. I think it was like an EOS. Honestly can't remember. It was an older camera, and I just picked it up because I wanted to learn it. And my gosh, there's so many buttons within a camera that when I started off, I was a little overwhelmed. I was like, what is this? I don't understand it. So I pulled actually a lot of my nursing friends to model for me to kind of learn. And that basically grew my photography business. So kind of going back to me not claiming to be a professional photographer, I like to say I'm a really, really good mom photographer. Like I love taking pictures of children. I love taking pictures of families, newborns. So I basically just grew my photography business, and it's more or less more of a side gig for me. I could have pursued it more full time, but again, nursing is more of my passion. So anyways, I picked up, I just wanted to make a point too. If you have a dream in photography, if you ever want to pursue photography, please don't give it up, but also know it's not as easy as it sounds. It's not a simple click, 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 and simple go on. It's not like editing like with Instagram, with a filter with Instagram. I use Lightroom right now. And I now have I now have a Canon 5D3. So I mean, there's photography equipment is so expensive too, and I think people don't understand that. When I do charge for sessions, they're like, oh, Deanna, she's just banking it up. Like she's just taking a half-hour session and, you know, she's making this amount of money, when really, if you break it down on how much time it takes to edit or how much the equipment is, I mean, you break it down, and there was like one month where I realistically was only making like $5 an hour if you really broke it down. So there's a lot to photographers that people don't see. And I really feel that photographers in general locally aren't respected as much as they should be. I mean, I'm a nurse, nursing professions, you get a lot of respect, right? You go into the photography realm. And I was finding out very quickly that photographers don't really get the respect that I feel that they deserve, because they're really capturing those moments for you. And they're spending not just that hour session clicking their camera. There is hours of editing that is spent. There's tons of money that's spent on photography equipment. And I really, really wish that people did see that side. But again, I mean, you don't really understand it until you're in it. And I wish people can just see that more. And I really do respect many of the photographers in our area, because I think in Rockford too, we don't live in a community where people are going to spend like thousands of dollars in pictures like they do in New York or any of these other big cities. So they're always looking for photographers that have the best price, but really you got to look at their quality of work too. Explore their style, because there's been many times too where I would have a client where they would want more of like the airy light feel, which I can provide, but my style is a little bit more moody. I tend to go into, I like to go in more of the moody style. So really explore, don't go into, don't look for a photographer that is for their price, basically. Look at their style, see what style do they like to give in their pictures, and look at their quality of work as well. So, I mean, that's kind of, my thoughts on photography. I mean, I love photography. It's definitely something that I enjoy doing. And it's really been great because I am able to capture my children grow. And that's something that I really want to provide as well for other families, to continue to capture their children grow. So I guess that's kind of one of the reasons why that I really wanted to get into photography. So yeah. You picked up photography as well too, James, didn't you, for a while?
Well, yes and no. For me, it's just kind of been a fun thing. And, you know, it's right now, though, it's great because I'm old enough that in my day, when I took photography classes in high school, we were still dealing with dark rooms. And we're still dealing with developing the film. And
I never got into that, but that's
while
awesome.
that to some people today, that sounds like more romantic and more technical. Let me tell you, it sucked. Because there was nothing worse than when you would get your camera and, you know, because a lot of what I enjoyed doing was like nature photography and landscape photography. And you'd go and like, you would like time it, like, you know, 4:45, the sun's going to be in the exact spot. And you'd get out there and you would take all these pictures. And then the next day you'd take them into the dark room and develop them all and realize they were blurry because one of your settings wasn't right on your camera. Right. Or you accidentally overexposed it and there's nothing you can do about it. And now that entire time you spent is a loss. Now with digital, like you can click and know right away, you know, and that's fun. That's, you know, it makes life so much more easier.
For sure.
And I'll admit, and I'll admit I was semi-depressed when it was a couple of years after I graduated high school and I stopped by the high school to see my old photography teacher, and where the darkroom had been was completely ripped out and was replaced with a bank of computers. And I was kind of like, oh man, I spent so many hours in there crying and, you know, why? Yeah, why did this happen? Gosh, one of the worst is you'd have to like take the film and put it in this little black bag with hands just, you know, with slots just for your hands, and pop it open and pull the film out and put it into this thing, because if the film saw any light at all, it was ruined. You know, and we would have, they'd have us pair up with another student and do these photography projects. And I had this guy, like, who was just an idiot. He was only there, he thought he was in photography for the easy credits. And I told him, I said, dude, don't worry about it. Like, I'll go out this weekend, I'll take all the pictures. You just get in the back seat and you'll get an A on this project. Don't worry about it. And I went out that weekend, shot a bunch of, shot a whole roll of film. Coming to class on Monday, and he grabs it off the corner of my desk. He's like, oh, thanks, man. Is this it? And I'm like, yeah. He's like, all right, well, I've got to help somebody. Pops the top of him and just pulls the film out, which instantly, like,
oh no,
it's gone. And all he could do is stare at him like, oh, dude,
get out, get out. We don't want you here.
Right. Don't you have somebody to go hit or something? You know, go be a job.
Right. Oh gosh, that's terrible. Yeah, I mean, I never got into the whole dark room. I mean, I've always been digital, and gosh, editing pictures. I mean, also if you're a photographer, try to shoot in RAW, because if you do overexpose or underexpose anything there, you can always save it. So that's something that I learned as a photographer. I mean, and that's the thing with the darkroom, you can't save it like you can pictures now, where you can just use all the digital and use all these editing softwares to make the picture the way you want it to be. So definitely, gosh.
The you know, and it's going back to what you were saying earlier. I think that it becomes one of those, just like you said, because people don't have the experience, they don't see all that goes in. It's sort of like, would you judge the Mona Lisa only on the cost of paint that it took to paint that thing? You know what I mean?
Right.
We're like, oh, so Leonardo da Vinci went and bought a couple things of paint and painted this thing, and I'm supposed to care, you know? But when you look at the final product, and that's what I think, like when I look at photography and I look at the finished print, and you think about how much it cost, it's like, well, how much experience, how much equipment, how much knowledge, and then just like you said, editing had to go into creating that finished product. So at the end of the day, that's what you're paying for, is the finished product. And I think that's worth more than anything. I would rather pay $300 for something absolutely phenomenal rather than $150 for something that's okay, you know.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's 100%. Like, I agree with that completely. And I don't know. Again, that's just something that I think that photographers don't get a lot of credit for, because I mean, there is a lot of time that takes into processing a photo and creating something that really represents not just the photographer, but capturing that family and the emotion within the family as well. So, I mean, just again, you're looking into photography, it's a great gig. There's a lot to learn. There's a lot more to it than people really understand or realize. And if you do see a photographer, give them more credit, because I mean, they go through so many things that people don't see, and I don't feel like they don't get enough credit for what they do. So I mean, there's a ton of photographers in our area that are awesome. I always like to say, I mean, sometimes you feel like photographers kind of have this competition with one another, right? Because it's a business and they want to have all these clients and they want to make all the money. But I do hope that photographers, if you're listening out there, that you do support each other as well. Because I mean, God forbid, if you're unable to take pictures for somebody one day and you refer another one of your photographer friends, I mean, that may come back to you as well one day. You may get a referral from that friend. So I had some experiences with some photographers that were very competitive and very, that were very, not petty. Well, they're kind of petty. Like they felt like, oh, they're starting their business up, so that's my competition. And don't think like that. You know, I mean, think more of like, okay, this is kind of somebody that has a lot of same interests as me. Like, encourage them, encourage growth. You're still going to have clients there. I mean, I just really hope as well, like nurses, I feel nurses are a lot better with supporting one another. I would love to see that with the photography community. And I think it's starting to get there. I really do. But there's still some of that, like, oh, I'm better than you, or, oh, this person doesn't shoot right, or, oh gosh, like, don't be like that. Or, so yeah, I don't know.
well, there's no shortage of clients. Like, everybody loves good photography. There's
Correct.
plenty of clients out there.
Correct.
You know, be a community. Absolutely. That's one of the things that I've found that's been really enjoyable about the podcast racket that I didn't realize when I got into it, is just how uncompetitive it is for how oversaturated the market is. Like, everybody and their brother has a podcast. Like, if you're doing a podcast, you're not special. I had to laugh so hard if everybody out there remembers Bob Saget from Full House.
Yeah.
And I was listening to a podcast that he was on, and Bob Saget recently started his own podcast. And he was talking about how, like, everybody's got a podcast now. He was like, you know, this guy's got a podcast. He said, hell, I think my UPS driver has a podcast now. I mean, it's just, it's so saturated. And yet we're just, you know, I've had people who have podcasts that I've met just from listening to their podcasts, who I've invited them to come on mine, and vice versa.
Yeah.
And it's just kind of like, yeah, we just generally just do this because we like hearing ourselves talk. That's the only reason we do it. Unless you're Joe Rogan, you're not going to get famous doing it. So
Oh, that's funny. That's awesome.
I wanted to ask you, how is Bink doing?
Sure. So yeah, I mean, many of my friends out there, social media followers may know, Bink was born with, she's doing awesome right now. So there was a lot of concerns when Bink was born. So Bianca was born with basically a birthmark that was covering the entire side of her left side of her face, over her head. So basically, she had a birthmark when she was born. I honestly thought it was just a bruise. I was like, okay, she must have just had some trauma during the delivery. Nothing, no concern with that. But then once the day after, we had a pediatrician come into the room, and I noticed that her and another nurse were kind of whispering to each other in the other side. And I was still very naive to thinking, oh, this is just a bruise, like, oh, no big deal. But then the pediatrician basically broke the news to us that they don't think it's a bruise. They think it's actually it's a birthmark. Didn't say much about it at the time. Basically just informed us to watch her. And I was like, okay, what does that mean? So one thing you should never do is, I guess, but for my case, it was a good thing. We actually Googled it and Googled all the complications that come with port wine stain birthmark. And just for people to understand what it is, it's a very rare condition, but it's a capillary malformation. So there was a gene mutation that occurred in utero or during conception, basically, and caused this huge birthmark, which is basically capillaries filling up, and it's not emptying correctly. So this is a lifelong issue that she's going to have. So long story short, basically, we saw a dermatologist, got some of the treatments done for her skin, but unfortunately, this birthmark, it's a vascular malformation. It affected her brain and her left eye, actually both eyes. We found out recently that both eyes are now affected. So what that means is the left side of her brain is atrophy. So it's a lot smaller than her right side. And a lot of it is because there's a lot more vascularity to the left side of the brain. And if you understand the anatomy of the brain, it's symmetrical, right? So the left side of the brain is a lot smaller. So left side of the brain controls a lot of her speech. So she does have some developmental delays. And then it also, the vascularity affects her eyes. So she has glaucoma. So we do see an ophthalmologist for that. So she does see a lot of wonderful specialties in UW. Love that team. And she's doing awesome right now. And a lot of it is because we were very proactive in trying to figure out what was going on and treating it early on. I did start a Facebook page, basically like a blog of what's kind of going on. And initially I started that blog because I'm friends with a lot of nurses and I have a ton of family. They kept asking me some of the same questions, and I wanted them to understand what was going on and what this is, because again, it's a very rare disease. And I started this page, Tiny But Mighty Bink. If you'd like to follow her page and see everything she's been through. Basically, I started this page to educate my family what was going on, and honestly, it grew into something bigger. So internationally, we've had some journalists come to us because, again, this is a rare condition, and they see all the treatments that she has to endure. And we had some journalists from Europe come and interview her. So she has been on some magazines and some newscasting in Europe. And it's been amazing to see how we can really kind of influence and encourage other parents that have children born with this condition, because a lot of people don't see that. I have parents messaging me all the time on that page. So I try to provide them some support. I don't give them any medical advice, but I do give them some direction on where to go. So one of the things Brand said about Bink when she was born, and when I was in like postpartum and crying about all the possibilities. Like he said to me, he's like, Deanna, you know, I really think Bink's going to change the world. And already at 3 years old now, she's doing fantastic. She literally has changed the world for many others and really encouraged people, because a lot of people have some, they're hesitant on getting the pulse dye laser treatment. And if you go on my page, you'll see it looks pretty brutal because she has a ton of red dots. It's basically, it looks like burn marks. But basically what that treatment is doing is kind of trying to stop, like cauterize, I guess you can look at it that way, the bleeding, and trying to wire them to basically fill and empty correctly. Unfortunately, this is going to be a lifelong treatment that she'll need to have until technology advances. But I don't know, that girl, she is so strong. Her name is so true. She is tiny, but she is so mighty, and I'm so proud of her. So, I mean, again, I just really like to educate people as well about her condition, and it not only educated people, but I really felt like it encouraged people as well. Mm-hmm. Thank you for bringing that up, James.
Yeah. Well, I just think it's incredible because I've been following it since the beginning. And for everything that she has been through and everything she continues to go through, I still find it incredible that every time you post a picture of her on social media, she's got a huge smile on her face.
She does.
You know, and that is amazing. And like, if that isn't uplifting in and of itself, like, you know, and then I kind of feel like an idiot. Like, here I come home from work, and I'm like, oh God, work sucks. And today, and then I see the picture of this little girl who's been through absolute hell in 3 years with a huge smile on her face. And I'm like, oh God, James. Suck it up, man. Come on. You know,
she's so happy. She's so funny. Oh my gosh, her personality, like her between Delilah, they're so different. It's funny just watching those two interact. And so yeah, I mean, I'm proud of both of them. Obviously, I'm the parent of them both. I'm just so proud of them both. Mm-hmm. So I don't know. It's just amazing seeing how this all turned out. And I just love, I don't know, I just love seeing people just be encouraged. Like you know me, James, I like to be the encourager. I like to be the uplifter. So I try to take situations that were very negative in my life, and I try to turn it into something positive. And I feel like it really did turn out into something positive. So, I mean, there's still concerns for her because with that condition, she is at risk for having strokes. Her seizures are contained for now, but the strokes are what concern me, because what happens is her brain I'm knocking on wood here, folks, could calcify and can cause some stroke. So, I mean, there's a lot of concerns for her, but we try to focus on where she's at now. We're so proud of her, and we just hope that she does well in life. I mean, there's still a lot of unknowns with her. And I'm one of those people where I like to know where my life is going. And so, that was tough for me as well, because, I mean, the unknowns is always scary, but yeah.
Well, and, you know, I'll say this, she's fortunate that if she was going to go through all this, that she has you and Brandon as parents, you know, because you guys are just absolutely loving and energetic and positive and intelligent people there can't be like better parents to have if you're going to have to deal with a situation like that. And I wish her nothing but the best, and hopefully the entire like medical field as a whole learns a lot from her case as well, so that in the future, you know, because we hear those stories of like, you know, we have a condition or an illness or a disease now that's a trip to the doctor and a prescription, whereas 100 years ago they didn't know why it was doing that, and It was like a lifelong struggle for people, and so hopefully that a lot of knowledge comes from this as well. That would be phenomenal.
Right, definitely. I 100% agree. And that's kind of what it ended up being. So I'm so proud of that. And I'm just so proud of her. So thank you for asking about her. She's doing awesome.
Oh, good. Well, all right. Well, we are up against the clock. I want to thank you so very much for taking time out of your morning to come on the podcast. I'm going to get on that One South reunion thing. And I absolutely guarantee that you will hear from me in the future.
Yes, Awesome, James. Thank you so much.
You
This is
bet.
wonderful.
Take care now.
You too. Bye.